Number one, I think the insurance industry is looking to see how they can use AI to reduce their costs and be more efficient and effective. I can tell you in the legal sector, we're looking at that too. We're trying to understand how the technology can be helpful. There was a recent case in New York where a lawyer wrote a brief using ChatGPT, and it turned out that most of the cases that he received from ChatGPT were fictitious. So it's called a hallucination. So
Okay.
ChatGPT hallucinated and came up with 6 fake cases, and he didn't check it. He didn't check it on his own. He
Uh-huh.
asked ChatGPT if it was real. ChatGPT said yes, apparently. And then he filed a brief in court. The lawyers for the other side said, "We can't find your cases. How did you come up with those?" And then eventually he had to admit it. He was sanctioned by the judge. He got in a lot of trouble. I'm not even sure if I think maybe they made him retire. I mean, it's a very bad situation. So, there's a lot to be worried about.
Hey Peter, hi, my name is Augustine. I am the editor-in-chief of Cyber Express. The segment is called Security Pin. So glad to have you on the show. So could you just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in cyber law and things like that?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and thanks for staying up late to accommodate the time difference. I am a lawyer in New York. My primary role is representing clients who have disputes with their insurance companies. And over the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, more and more of that has focused on cyber insurance disputes. So our clients purchase cyber insurance or other forms of insurance to cover cyber risks. And then they have an issue either in negotiating the terms of the policy with their insurer, or after an incident has happened, fighting about the costs or the loss or the coverage for the response. So we're very involved in all of those aspects.
Got it, got it, got it. Okay, I'll be honest. I think this is the first time that I'm actually talking to a lawyer about this entire concept of cyber insurance. So I had a discussion pretty recently about the increasing ransomware attacks and ransomware gangs, behaving like corporate entities where they have an entire HR division and they work, and then a lot of them are almost reaching an evaluation of 1 billion, getting them this name called ransomware unicorn. One of While one of the suggestions came in, discussion came in. One discussion that happened was that it probably is, under the purview of cyber insurance agency or the industry, which can basically get on this, ensure that the entire thing of paying ransom after attack can be prevented if there is a lot more stringent cyber insurance law. So what are your thoughts on that?
So there's a lot to unpack there, but basically the idea is that most forms of coverage for ransomware would provide coverage for payments, and also for business interruption and the downtime for the business to get back to where it was.
Right. Okay. So what I'm suggesting is how much of that onus falls on insurance underwriting to ensure that you may be sure that one of your clients are not paying the ransomware. So what are the checkpoints that can be introduced by the insurance companies as such?
So the main checkpoint here in the US is you don't want to make a payment to a sanctioned actor. So we have something called the OFAC list, which is a list maintained by I think it's the Treasury Department, of entities that are basically blacklisted from doing financial transactions, and that if you provide them with money, you could be sanctioned. I think that's the primary protection we have against the money going to bad actors. But in terms of the payments proper, I was on a panel yesterday with people from the FBI, and
Right.
the official position of the FBI is that no one should pay a ransom ever because it's bad. And as you said, it leads to these massive, criminal conglomerates, unicorns. But the reality is that for most individual companies, paying a ransom is the fastest way to get back up on their feet and back to business. And the amounts are generally small enough that the company can continue to, proceed once they've made the payment. So paying a ransom is something that I often see, and probably the only exception to that would be for some of my clients, if they feel they can get backed up and utilize their backups, and their backups aren't infiltrated and tainted, to do that and kind of work around having to pay the ransom.
All right, all right. Okay, I think one of the initial discussion was that there is the data breaches that are occurring at biometric data. So, what according to you are the different types of commonly exploited biometric vulnerabilities, and what are the most commonly breached biometric data according to you?
Well, interestingly enough, I don't know how much exploitation is really happening, right? I mean, you have a lot of regulation about biometric data, but the reality is most of the violations of the law that we're hearing, or alleged violations of the law, those are for improper storage or perhaps sharing something without consent. But it seems for the most part that these are more technical violations of the law, as opposed to, okay, I'm selling your fingerprints to a third party. So it's kind of interesting because we have the heavy hand from regulators, but it's, I've heard privacy professionals say, what are we accomplishing here? Are we safer because of these laws and because of these litigations?
Okay, okay. And what, according to you, are the measures that companies are taking, especially when it comes to protecting biometric data? And do you think they are effective?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, again, because so much of this is technical, right? You have these new laws that are telling you what's right and what's wrong, but they're kind of vague, and the people writing them aren't necessarily experts in biometric data.
Yeah.
And so companies are kind of running around trying to figure out what they're supposed to do, and knowing that even a technical violation could get you in hot water puts companies in a very precarious situation. So I'm really not sure from the technical side what companies should be doing better. But it seems to me that the most important thing that the regulators are focused on is really the sharing of that data, and also obtaining consent from your employees to keep that data and maintain that data. Most of the cases we see involve employees, but as you know, biometric data can be collected for many different things in many different ways. And one of the leading cases in Illinois, which is one of the leading states here in the US on regulating this issue, involved an amusement park. And if you wanted to be a pass holder at an amusement park, you had to give them your fingerprints, I guess, so that no one else pretended to be you and use your pass. And that led to a litigation. So it just shows you that there's so many different ways in which biometric data can be used, can be captured, can be stored, and then, of course, regulated.
Got it, got it. Okay, so just for my knowledge, how does how does insurance coverage for biometric data breaches work? And what are the typical policy terms, and what kind of damage and losses are generally covered?
Yeah, so right now you have a whole bunch of different insurance policies. Obviously you have cyber insurance, but you could have coverage under general liability or employment practices if it involves employees, or directors and officers insurance, or E&O insurance. There's so many different policies that might provide cover. But most of the disputes that we're seeing right now involve general liability insurance, and often smaller businesses that may not have a specific cyber product. And these smaller businesses mostly are looking for a defense right now. They're looking for someone to pay the costs of their litigation, pay their costs of dealing with regulators. It gets more complicated, and where I think we'll see more fights in the future on paying those damage awards, because some of the damage awards we're seeing now are so big, hundreds of millions of dollars, that surely that will be another battleground. But I think for a lot of these smaller companies who may not have hundreds of millions of dollars in insurance, the likelihood of insurance covering all of their losses may be low. But it also goes to, I spoke with an expert recently who was telling me that, one of the things they're having to fight about is these damage awards are so astronomical that it would put most of these companies out of business. And so when they're getting down to it with the other companies, they're saying, look, we can't pay. If you want us to pay this, we'll just go bankrupt and this will be over. So, insurance can help by providing some funding for these settlements that would not put the company out of business.
Got it, got it, got it. Okay, so another question. What are the new kinds of disputes that are emerging in this particular field of biometric privacy? and how and are they really influencing the policy terms?
Yeah, I mean the amounts are staggering. There was a recent decision in Illinois which said that every time there is a violation, that's another that triggers another amount of damages. So let's say it's $500 per violation of someone's biometric privacy rights, and you have 10 employees and they clock in the morning with their fingerprint, and they clock out in the afternoon, that's 20 violations in one day, right? So now you have, $10,000 or whatever the math
Right.
is. And then you have them work 5 days a week. And then you have them work 20 days a month. And, it just goes up and up and up and up and up. And then if
Yeah.
you can imagine, for an even larger company with thousands of employees, all of a sudden, we're in the billions. And so, yeah, the numbers are really staggering. And I think that's why people are paying so much attention to this issue right now.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay, another thing that is recently the cybersecurity labeling for IoT devices came in, and this is we feel it's a one incredible step in terms of IoT protection, and then a lot more visibility of cybersecurity around the IoT devices. So, what's your thoughts on that? And do you think how do you think that will evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a couple of incidents. Maybe it was in the last few years where all of a sudden, bad actors were taking, thousands of IoT devices with, weak passwords or factory preset passwords and
Right,
taking
right,
control of them and doing all kinds of crazy things. And at the time, there was a lot of focus paid to that and what that will mean going forward. I haven't really seen a lot of those disputes either in litigation or focused on by the regulators. So I haven't really seen a spillover into the insurance world yet, but certainly I think it's something that we can expect in the future.
okay, okay, okay. So another thing. So what basically do you think blockchain or leveraging more AI, this can be one of those mitigation strategies that can get a lot of say safety, especially for biometric data?
That's an interesting thought. I guess the question would be, and I'm not a technical person, I'm a lawyer, but really, how would you scale the technology so that even the smallest of companies would be able to utilize that? I think that's the real question, right? Because a lot of the disputes that we see involve sometimes very small companies. Larger companies, I think, can be early adopters of new technology, and so it may be easier for them to do it in that way. But if it's just a matter of every time you go to work, you give your fingerprint and you come in and come out, I don't know how you'd be able to incorporate the technologies.
Okay. Oh, and also, I think I should have asked you this before. What are the potential repercussions for a company that has, recently suffered a biometric data breach, especially from an insurance standpoint?
Yeah, and again, I'm speaking from the perspective of the states, but it's may be true elsewhere. The biggest challenges are, number one, regulators, right? Because the government is carefully looking at this. In the US, we have laws at the local, state, and federal level. So there are different people looking at this from different angles. For example, if you have a breach and you don't put it in your financial statements, the SEC might come after you for failing to have proper disclosures. So that's there's this big regulatory bucket that includes a lot of different regulators looking at things in a lot of different ways. On top of that, then you just have all these private individuals and lawyers who can take advantage of these statutes, like the one BIPA that we were talking about in Illinois,
Right.
and can file class action lawsuits with huge damage numbers. So I would say it's the governmental one is the one that I think is number one. Number two would be plaintiffs and class actions and all that. And then there's also just reputational risk, right? I mean,
Right.
it depends on the kind of company, but if you're a customer of this company, putting aside employees, if you're a customer of a company, we heard about one where the company, I think, did IT services, right? And then they had a problem. So if a company that does IT services has a problem, how good are they to protect your, you in the
Exactly.
same, right? I think actually it was in the context of a ransomware attack, but still the idea holds, right? Which is that if they can't protect themselves, how can they protect you? And so the reputational risks can also cause harm to businesses.
Right. Right. Okay, so I think the few of the last ones. I just want to know your approach about how cyber insurance market is evolving in terms of basically a very personal opinion that you have. And do you think this will be cyber insurance market will be the torchbearer for a lot of regulations across the world?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the market I think is maturing, and so we still don't have uniformity of policy terms, but I think we're starting to move closer to that. Everyone seems to handle claims in different ways, but we are starting to see insurers cooperate on claims and have a single repository for claims. So there is some maturity, I think, in the market. It seemed like for a long time prices were going up and up and up and up and up. Recently, I've heard some reports that there's more capacity in the market, and so perhaps there isn't as much price pressure now. I haven't seen that from my clients. No one said to me, "Hey, this was great." So I don't know if that's true, but I have heard that generally. But it's still very much a world of uncertainty because we don't have uniformity in terms, and the underwriting is challenging because this hasn't been around that long, right? So sometimes what the underwriters are doing to protect themselves is, they're putting in sublimits, for example. So if your policy would provide you with $10 million in coverage normally, it might only provide 2.5 million for a ransomware attack, right? So they're limiting their own financial risk, which is good for them, but not necessarily for you. So there's a lot there, but I do think that it's a big market. There's a lot of money to be made. And so insurers are continuing, and others outside of insurance. I think Bain Capital just announced that they were going to invest some money in the insurance industry. I'm not sure it was cyber specific, but the idea being that as long as this is a market that could be fruitful for folks, they're going to continue to look at it. And so what we're seeing is, and in some ways I think it's positive, right, is that underwriting is getting more stringent. So if you are lacking certain basic protections, you're probably not going to get a cyber insurance policy like MFA. If you don't have MFA, it's very hard to get them to underwrite you. So I think we're also seeing folks bring their company security policies up to the standard of insurance in order to qualify for insurance, which overall is a good thing. The other thing is that for some companies, some insurance companies, they're so big in the marketplace and they have so many clients that when a new threat comes about, they see it very quickly and they can share that news quickly and they can react quickly and they can help their clients work through those things. So if they know that there's a ransomware gang that would take, $20 and go away, and they have thousands of clients, they can advise those clients accordingly pretty quickly. So I think there are a lot of benefits to the development of this industry going forward.
Got it. So one last question. This is also the hottest AI summer, and then our understanding of AI is evolving, and we don't know what kind of threats it is going to bring about. How do you think how much of AI will impact the insurance industry?
It's going to be in a lot of different ways. Number one, I think the insurance industry is looking to see how they can use AI to reduce their costs and be more efficient and effective. I can tell you in the legal sector, we're looking at that too. We're trying to understand how the technology can be helpful. There was a recent case in New York where a lawyer wrote a brief using ChatGPT, and it turned out that most of the cases that he received from ChatGPT were fictitious. So it's called a hallucination. So
Okay.
ChatGPT hallucinated and came up with 6 fake cases, and he didn't check it. He didn't check it on his own. He asked ChatGPT if it was real, and ChatGPT said yes, apparently. And then he filed a brief in court. The lawyers for the other side said, "We can't find your cases. How did you come up with those?" And then eventually he had to admit it. He was sanctioned by the judge. He got in a lot of trouble. I'm not even sure if I think maybe they made him retire. I mean, it's a very bad situation. So, there's a lot to be worried about. From an insurance claims perspective, it certainly creates opportunities for additional claims, but I think a lot of it would fall within traditional forms of insurance. Like that would probably come within his lawyer's malpractice insurance, right? Or professional negligence insurance. You might have media liability policies which protect you against the content that your company puts out. Cyber policies may, if the concern is that you're sharing client data by putting it into one of these AI systems and it's an open system and it's violating their privacy, then it might lead to some of the same issues that we were talking about with BIPA. So I haven't yet seen a scenario where it kind of stands on its own yet. But you know, it's so new, it's so hard to know what direction it will go in.
Okay. All right. All right. That's about it, Peter. Any closing notes you have, or could just wrap it?
No, I appreciate it. We covered a lot of different topics in a short period of time.
I
So I'm always happy to come back and follow up. But thank you for taking the time and for staying up late and for
No
arranging everything.
problem. No problem. Again, really a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Take care. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.